People from other states have no intelligence. We start with an example. Bobby Fischer.
PhD in medicine and spoke 7 languages fluently,
His
and his father,
IQ
Herman,
inherited
was a biophysicist. Or at least the man people thought was his father was a biophysicist. It turns out there's an extremely good chance Bobby was actually the product of an affair his mother had with Hungarian mathematician and physicist Paul Nemenyi. Either way, it's safe to say nature was on his side, though things were a bit complicated on the nurture front. Bobby was technically homeless when he was born in 1943, and with his parents separated, he and his sister Joan were brought up by their mother. Regina was a complex woman. Extremely politically active, she was routinely investigated by the FBI for her suspected communist links. Bobby was never particularly close to his mum, and when he was just 16, she left him to live on his own in one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Brooklyn, as she pursued her medical
You can be an
career.
atheist. You can even believe in Satan. But you cannot be a communist.
Measured at over 180, which is astonishingly high.
How can somebody with
Even at this early stage of his
1800
career,
IQ
there
be
were
an
signs
paranoid?
that not all was well with Fischer. He was temperamental and prone to making outlandish demands of tournament organizers. When those demands weren't met, and they
Egoist,
often weren't,
egocentric,
he
genius,
simply
diva,
didn't show
but
up.
not paranoid.
He also had a bad habit of speaking his mind,
Speak up
which
your
wouldn't
mind, believe in
necessarily
state
have
of
been a bad
liberty.
thing, but unfortunately, Fischer's undeniably beautiful mind was home to some rather ugly ideas.
But what is paranoia? Sane person. What's exactly a sane person?
Despite the fact his mother was Jewish, Fischer was a fierce anti-Semite for most of his adult life, a prejudice that would later become an obsession. And he's on
You can talk shit about a communist or an Arab, but you cannot be anti-Semitic.
record as having said some truly unforgivable things, particularly as he got older.
Well, old men are not to be judged. They are too old for that.
He won the second game too, but this time thanks to a forfeit, after Fischer, surprising nobody, refused to play. There was huge media attention on the match, and Fischer felt the massed TV cameras recording the game for worldwide audiences had put him off. He demanded that the second game be moved to a more private location. When it wasn't, he didn't show up. The match would probably have ended right there had Spassky not intervened. In an admirable show of sportsmanship, rather than simply take the title and move on, the Soviet champion asked that Fischer's demands be met so the match could continue. The rest is history. Despite being 2-0 down, which would typically be seen as a huge deficit in the finely balanced world of chess, Fischer won 7 of the following 19 games, losing only once and drawing 11 times. It was a crushing victory.
Even a communist respected his demands. His opponent respected him more than the rest of the American citizens.
Due to defend his world title against a young Soviet grandmaster Anatoly Karpov. But once again, Fischer issued a string of demands prior to the match, some of which were fairly reasonable, others of which not so much. When only some of the demands were met, Fischer once again walked away, this time forfeiting the title. He wouldn't play another.
When you are superior to other players by far, you will start to have demands. That doesn't prove indeed that you are insane.
Though he did get himself involved in a doomsday cult called the Worldwide Church of God. The group believed the world would end in 1975. But when that year came and went with a notable lack of apocalypses, Fischer, along with many other members, moved on.
Well, old men are not to be judged. They are too old for that. Imagine also, he had a rough life.
He also got himself into trouble with the law. At the time, there was a United Nations embargo against commercial activities in Yugoslavia, and the match was deemed to be a violation. Fischer knew full well what he was doing was illegal. During a live news conference in the build-up, he took out a cease and desist letter sent to him by his own government and spat on it in front of the world's press. The US's response was equally emphatic, though a little less unhygienic. A warrant was issued for Fischer's arrest. Not keen to face the fallout that awaited him in America, Fischer would never again return to his homeland, living instead in Hungary and Japan. Though he did almost get himself deported after being arrested for traveling on an expired passport in 2004. The incident saw him imprisoned in Japan for 9 months, during which time his old foe Boris Spassky made a personal plea for the then US President George W. Bush to intervene in the case. When that failed, Spassky offered to join Fischer in his cell on the condition that the two were given a chess set. Ultimately, Fischer managed to persuade the government of Iceland to offer him full citizenship, and he lived out the rest of his days in Reykjavik, the site of his great triumph over Spassky.
Not insane. Now another example. Charlie Chaplin.
Charlie Chaplin was one of the world's greatest filmmakers, and he was also blacklisted from Hollywood and exiled from the United States. Turns out, the real life of this slapstick legend wasn't very funny at all. By the end of the 19th century,
Kid from a broken family.
for the Chaplins. Instead, it was the beginning of their nightmare. It quickly became clear that Hannah's vocal issue was merely the first outward sign of her rapidly declining mental health. As she and the children continued on in poverty, Hannah drifted further from reality. Eventually, she was institutionalized, and Charlie and his brother were thrown into a workhouse. Charles Chaplin Sr. was still alive at the time and briefly agreed to take the boy.
Once again, an irresponsible mother and an abandoned son. Recycled the same story we saw with Fischer.
Creative freedom and the largest salary in Hollywood. So it's fair to say that things were going well for Chaplin, and they would continue to do so for the next few years. But this was also the period in which Chaplin the autocrat emerged. It would be the world's first real glimpse of the tortured and driven man behind the genius. Known as the most demanding man.
He thrived with his performance. Let's make something pretty clear. He was Charlie of the world, not Charlie from USA.
One who was about to emerge. By 1918, Charlie Chaplin was making some of his finest and most popular pictures. Off camera, however, Chaplin was anything but the lovable miscreant he appeared to be. Mildred Harris was barely 16 when Chaplin met her. She was an emerging starlet at best, and Chaplin was the biggest star in the world. He seduced her, and when he thought he'd gotten her pregnant, he arranged a hasty marriage. When he found out the pregnancy wasn't real, he got her pregnant for real, and then divorced her.
Once again, we see bad character exposed for his bad behavior. At least this guy is not considered insane like Fischer, maybe because he had no Russian friends.
As the war got underway, Chaplin began making public speeches extolling the virtues of the Soviet Union. In 1942, he even praised Joseph Stalin's purges and said, "The only people who object to communism are Nazi agents." With the establishment already against him over his private life, Chaplin's perceived anti-American beliefs handed his enemies the mother of all sticks to beat him.
Oh well, I wasn't wrong at all. Secret agents did communists what Nazis to Hebrews. In the land of liberty, a communist is a dead man without a grave.
The communist fifth columnists among us are working for a world dictatorship. To accomplish this, their strategy is to undermine the confidence of our people.
Ushered into law in 1910 by Representative James, indicted by the HUAC, Charlie Chaplin was still blacklisted in Hollywood. Blacklisting ruined guys like Dalton Trumbo, but Chaplin was somewhat immune since he was rich enough to finance his own films. This may be why, after the disaster of Monsieur Verdoux subsided, he was back in the director's chair for Limelight. Man in exile. The last decades of Charlie Chaplin's life were marked by ups and downs. On the one hand, he only made 2 more films, A King in New York and A Countess from Hong Kong.
Okay, he made other 2 movies since he was too old to keep up with
Make
acting.
mistakes, and the Swiss police eventually tracked them down. After a tortured life and a truly bizarre postscript, Chaplin was finally laid to rest, this time for good.
Oh, what a relief. He is gone for good. Now people from USA you can celebrate. He feels sad about what he believed for USA. Disappointed for the reason that it was not the country of liberty. Well, Switzerland, he found a really liberal country. You're welcomed in Switzerland even if you are a Hebrew or Arab or a communist or capitalist. Why US Americans have so low IQ judgment? But what is capitalism? Just a simple example.
Excuse me. So, I'm sorry to interrupt your run. I know you're busy. I was just wondering, do you live in this neighborhood?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a place for like sushi
Usually,
around here?
a gold digger
Yeah,
is
sure.
the
There's
one chasing
a famous
gold.
sushi place around the
Not
corner,
the-
just right there.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Because my
Gold
mom,
chasing
really, my
gold
mom
digger.
wants sushi, and I have no idea where to get sushi from because I just moved out here,
We assume
and
that
she's at home
the
at my
guy
house.
who
She's like, I
goes-
want sushi, and I'm like, I don't know where to get sushi right now. So there's one very close.
Yeah, very close nearby.
Is it good sushi though, or is it like cheap sushi?
The best.
What's the best? Like how expensive? Because I
Like-
mean, as you can see, I don't just.
If you ask people from Europe, they see no gold digger in this video. They see on one side a rich butt, a nice butt looking for a rich boy, on the other side
Eat
a
any
rich
cheap gas
playboy
station
looking for a
sushi.
nice butt.
I like the good stuff. You know what I mean?
I can show you around if you want.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to interrupt your hike if you're.
Yeah, I'm not busy.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Well, that's funny you offer because I saw you walking and I was like, I wanted to talk to you to get information about sushi, but I was also impressed about how fit you are. I was like, wow, she is pretty fine.
Thank you.
You know, I just moved out here. I have no friends, let alone a female friend.
Oh.
But you seem pretty cool. You're very friendly, very talkative.
Yeah, I can show you around, no problem at all.
Okay, what do you got planned for like later in the evening? Do you have any plans?
I'm free. I don't really have plans.
So in exchange of this pretty butt, you offer expensive car. You are not exposing gold digger, but the reality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Capitalist
Let's do
society.
this. Why don't we go get? I don't want to like have the car run you over.
yeah.
You can stand here. The sun's
So,
on my face. Sorry.
Exist
We can get
playboys
sushi. Give it to
chasing
my mom,
nice butts
and then me and
on
you
the
can go to the
other
beach or
side.
something, get some food,
They
get
are
drinks.
Sounds
nice
good.
butts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
at
like
night
that.
you can come back to my
Rich
place and
playboys.
watch a movie and see where things go.
For sure.
You have a. Did I bother you? Or? I mean, I know it's a little
Okay,
not,
this
a
guy
little dirty, but we can get a car
has
wash
many
if you
girls.
prefer.
Yeah, but
You're
I-
smiling. Why are you
I
smiling?
don't think it's gonna happen. Sorry.
Why are you smiling? Are you making fun of me?
No.
You're
just that,
you're walking backwards and you're smiling.
Yeah, but I can't. I'm sorry. Sorry for that.
It's okay. I feel a little heartbroken, but I mean I respect it if you're. I didn't know you're married. I just found out. Is it serious? Is it like a serious
Yeah,
marriage?
that's my husband. We married.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So I just.
Um,
sorry.
You don't want to like get coffee and just be friends and see, we could just be friends,
No.
see where things go?
I have a very jealous husband.
You have a jealous husband. I see. What does he do?
So do I expose here why people from USA have a low intelligence quote?